lockdown. Yes, there is fear. Yes, there is isolation. Yes, there is panic buying. Yes, there is sickness. Yes, there is even death. But they say that in Wuhan, after so many years of noise, you can hear the birds again. They say that after just a few weeks of quiet, the sky is no longer thick with fumes, but blue and grey and clear. They say that in the streets of Assisi, people are singing to each other across the empty squares, keeping their windows open so that those who are alone may hear the sounds of family around them. They say that a hotel in the west of Ireland is offering free meals and delivery to the housebound. Today, a young woman I know is busy spreading flyers with her number through the neighbourhood so that the elders may have someone to call on. Today, churches, synagogues, mosques and temples are preparing to welcome and shelter the homeless, the sick, the weary. All over the world, people are slowing down and reflecting. All over the world, people are looking at their neighbours in a new way. All over the world, people are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are, to how little control we really have, to what really matters, to love. So we pray and we remember that yes, there is fear, but there does not have to be hate. Yes, there is isolation, but there does not have to be loneliness. Yes, there is panic buying, but there does not have to be meanness. Yes, there is sickness, but there does not have to be disease of the soul. Yes, there is even death, but there can always be a rebirth of love. Wake to the choices you make as to how to live now. Today, breathe. Listen. Behind the factory noises of your panic, the birds are singing again. The sky is clearing. Spring is coming. And we are always encompassed by love. Open the windows of your soul. And though you may not be able to touch across the empty square, sing.
Why 27?
1月3日，中方开始定期向美方通报疫情信息和防控举措。
目前的这个资料表示呢，它是肯定的有人传人。
At least 6 people have died in an outbreak of the new coronavirus, which has now reached the United States. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has confirmed the first U.S. case has been detected in Washington state.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern over the global outbreak of novel coronavirus.
People die from the flu. We have 12 cases, 11 cases. Typically that will go away in April. We're in great shape there.
This disease, as Dr. Schuchat said, is contained.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. Democrats will only say horrible things. So far, we have lost nobody to coronavirus in the United States. Our country is doing so great. We are so unified.
WHO, the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. The CDC is advising the use of non-medical cloth face covering. I don't think I'm going to be doing it.
$16,000 deaths in New York. That means you're going to have tens of thousands of deaths outside of New York.
You know, I would say between 100 and 200,000 cases, but I don't want to be held to that.
We can hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000. We all together have done a very good job.
Good morning. We're here today to announce 3 separate cases highlighting the ongoing threat posed by Chinese economic espionage and research theft in the United States. First, the arrest today of a Harvard University professor for lying about his participation in a Chinese foreign recruitment program. Second, this morning we have unsealed a separate indictment of a Chinese national working as a scientific researcher at Boston University who failed to mention on her visa application that she is also a lieutenant with the People's Liberation Army. Finally, this office has indicted another Chinese national for trying to smuggle vials of biological material out of the United States to China and lying about it to federal investigators. That defendant, whose entry to the United States had been sponsored by Harvard University, was a cancer researcher at a lab at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. So, this morning, the FBI arrested Dr. Charles Lieber, the chair of the Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Harvard University, for making false statements regarding his involvement in China's Thousand Talents Plan and his affiliation with the Wuhan University of Technology. The complaint alleges that Dr. Lieber signed a contract with the Chinese university in Wuhan and was paid up to $50,000 per month, plus up to $158,000 in living expenses, and awarded more than $1.5 million to set up a research lab at the Chinese school and work there on researching nanotechnology. Lieber also joined China's Thousand Talents Plan, according to the complaint, a Chinese government-run program designed to entice scientists and researchers in the United States to share their research expertise with China. At the same time, Dr. Lieber was receiving U.S. grant funds from the Department of Defense and the National Institutes of Health. National Institutes of Health spends up to $39 million a year funding medical research in the United States. Those programs required Dr. Lieber to disclose if he was working with, including receiving funding from, any foreign power. When questioned, Lieber hid his involvement with the Chinese entities, including specifically disavowing any connection to China's Thousand Talents Plan. Meanwhile, based on the complaint, it appears that China paid Lieber hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years for his involvement with the Chinese entities and for his work on research for Chinese gain. Also today, a federal grand jury indicted Yanqing Ye, a Chinese national with lying on her J-1 visa application, making false statements to Customs and Border Protection, conspiracy, and being an unregistered agent of the People's Republic of China. According to court documents, Ye is a lieutenant in the People's Liberation Army, but she concealed her military connections while employed as a researcher at Boston University's Department of Physics, Chemistry, and Biomedical Engineering Center for Polymer Studies. The indictment alleges that a colonel in the People's Liberation Army and other military officers from the Chinese National University of Defense Technology gave Ye numerous assignments while she was in the United States, such as conducting research, assessing U.S. military websites, and sending documents and information back to China. In April 2019, Ye was questioned by customs officers at Logan Airport on her way to China. According to the indictment, she lied about her involvement with Chinese military projects. A border search of her electronic devices showed that Ye had compiled information for the People's Liberation Army about 2 U.S. residents with expertise in robotics and computer science. Lastly, last week this office indicted Zheng Zhaozhang, a Chinese national sponsored by Harvard University who was doing cancer research at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Zheng was charged with attempting to smuggle to Beijing vials of biological material, along with other research materials that he had stolen from the lab at the Beth Israel, where Zheng was working on cancer cell research. Before he boarded his flight, customs officers discovered 21 vials of biological material in a sock in his baggage. When confronted by the officers, Zheng initially lied and said he was not traveling with any biological or research materials. Chemistry, nanotechnology, polymer studies, robotics, computer science, biomedical research. This is not an accident or a coincidence. This is a small sample of China's ongoing campaign to siphon off American technology and know-how for Chinese gain. Recently, Attorney General Barr referred to China as this country's primary rival. Similarly, FBI Director Chris Wray recently told Congress that right now there is no country that poses a greater counterintelligence threat to the United States than China. Through the use of not only traditional intelligence officers, but academics, researchers, its own private citizens, China is engaged in a massive, long-term campaign to steal U.S. research and technology for its own uses. As demonstrated by these cases, on the academic side, the Chinese government uses partnerships and exchanges with U.S. schools and research institutions to access cutting-edge research and equipment. Obviously, most visiting Chinese academics and researchers are here to work in good faith in U.S. institutions, but some of them are not. Some number have been incentivized by the Chinese government, either through the use of money or other means, to gather U.S. research and smuggle it back to China. Because of the sheer scope of this threat, a year ago, the Attorney General created the China Initiative at the U.S. Department of Justice, designed to prioritize and aggressively prosecute Chinese economic espionage and theft of intellectual property. The cases we are announcing today are part of that effort. Boston is an especially attractive target for this kind of exploitation, and universities and research institutions and tech companies in this area must become sensitized to this threat. Our community benefits greatly from the diversity and talent of international visitors and our partnerships with foreign institutions, especially research institutions. But Chinese economic espionage and theft is a real and daily occurrence that we must begin to confront.
As the world struggles to contain the new virus, a new speculation from the Chinese scientists who believe it may have originated at a research facility not far from the Wuhan fish market. While they say more research needs to be done to find solid proof, such labs are known to contain disease-ridden animals, including hundreds of bats. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
Amid the continued spread of the COVID-19 virus, there's rising speculation the virus could have originated from a government laboratory in Wuhan, rather than the widely held belief that it emerged from the city's Huanan seafood markets. Citing a report published by Chinese scientists, a Chinese-language newspaper published in Hong Kong, Mingpao, and the British daily The Mirror, explained Sunday that the Wuhan Center for Disease Control, or WHCDC, could have spawned the contagion in Hubei province. According to the report penned by Bo Tao Xiao and Lei Xiao of the South China University of Technology, the research lab, which is only 280 meters away from the Huanan seafood market, kept disease-ridden animals, including more than 600 bats. It stated that while it's plausible the virus was leaked from the lab and contaminated initial patients in this epidemic, more solid evidence is required through future study. The report also raised the possibility that the Wuhan Institute of Virology could have leaked the virus while it was carrying out tests involving Chinese horseshoe bats. Against such a backdrop, an article published by the Washington Times late last month is garnering attention as it raised the possibility that the disastrous outbreak could be the accidental result of biological weapons research. This comes as a renowned law professor at Tsinghua University in Beijing, Xu Jianren, is known to be missing after publicly condemning Chinese President Xi Jinping for failing to contain the spread of the virus at an early stage. He even added the condemnation could be the last message of his life. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
Hello, I'm Yondon Latu at the South China Morning Post. I know the world is not done yet with crucifying China for the coronavirus crisis, and much of the bad press is justified given how this contagion was inaugurated by a country with total control over information and a track record of cover-ups. But let's take a breather from all the xenophobic hysteria and victim blaming for a calm and calculating look at what China has done so far in containing the epidemic. We need to understand how the dynamics have changed and why the time has come for other countries to snap out of the Schadenfreude and realize they cannot afford to throw stones anymore while living in glass houses. After locking down entire cities and placing tens of millions of citizens under quarantine, China's authoritarian government has managed to put a lid on the proliferation of COVID-19 to a significant extent. The country has whittled down daily infection numbers to low double digits now and keeps reporting the lowest figures since the outbreak began more than 2 months ago. For several days in a row, all new domestic cases have been restricted to only ground zero in Wuhan. Hospitals packed to the rafters with COVID-19 patients just a few weeks ago have empty beds to show now. And China has started sending its medical experts overseas to help other countries tackle their outbreaks. All this is because the nation is on a war footing, with the World Health Organization acknowledging it as perhaps the most ambitious, agile, and aggressive disease containment effort in history. And now with the global infection tally well above the 100,000 mark, China is closing its borders to arrivals from other countries that pose a threat. Don't miss the irony and implications of what's happening here. China may have given this disease to the rest of the world, but now it's making sure the rest of the world doesn't give it right back. And why not, considering how complacent so many countries have been, to their detriment? Look what's happened to Italy. But the elephant in the room is the United States, which will need watching because the picture is likely to be far worse than the one President Donald Trump is painting. Woefully unprepared was how America's largest nursing union summed it up in a recent warning to the government about a fragmented and broken public health infrastructure that would not be able to cope with a crisis of this magnitude. The US has only now reported more than 1,000 infections because testing for COVID-19 has been conducted at a fraction of the scale it should be. Just a few thousand have been tested so far. Compare that with nearly 200,000 in South Korea, which has set up fast food-style drive-through testing stations. A novel concept Americans would surely embrace if their government could get its act together. It doesn't help that Trump has been making recklessly irresponsible claims about the disease and lulling Americans into a false sense of security by routinely disputing scientific data and offering clueless personal opinions that directly contradict public health advice. He has suggested, based on personal hunches, that the disease will miraculously go away with the onset of summer, that it's mostly very mild, that many people recover without having to see a doctor, that hundreds of thousands will get better just by, sitting around and even going to work. Trump has been criticized for treating the epidemic as more of an obstacle to his re-election campaign than a wider threat to humanity, but that may well provide the jumper cables required to get him moving. He cares deeply about the stock market, to which he has tied his political fortunes, so it's in his own interest to fight whatever is hurting it. And of course he cares about his own health, being a germaphobe. So self-preservation means doing what it takes to wipe out the scourge that is threatening to take away everything he holds dear. Otherwise, it may soon be time for countries to start shutting out Americans trying to come in. Here in Hong Kong, remember how militant we've been about closing our borders to mainland Chinese citizens? And how some restaurants even refuse to serve them because they may be infected? Well, if the outbreak in the US explodes to the extent that America becomes a clear and present danger to the rest of the world, are we going to be as xenophobic towards American arrivals? No. As long as they're not Chinese, it's okay. Oh, all right then. Thanks for watching.
If I could just possibly add specifically on India, obviously India, like China, is a hugely populous country, and the future of this pandemic to a greater extent will be determined of what happens in very large highly populated, densely populated countries. So it's really, really important that India continues to take aggressive action at the public health level and at the level of society to contain, control, suppress this disease and to save lives. India led the world in eradicating 2 silent killers, or eliminating them in the country. Smallpox, one of the greatest successes of mankind, a virus that killed more people on this planet than all the wars put together. India, through targeted public health intervention, ended that disease and gave a great gift to the world. India also eliminated polio, another silent killer, and did a tremendous job on surveillance and finding cases and vaccinating and doing all the things that need to be done. So India has tremendous capacities. It's exceptionally important that countries like India lead the way, show the world what can be done, and do as they have done before. Show that aggressive, sustained public health action from community right the way through the head of state can have a profound effect on the trajectory and the outcome of this pandemic.
Lemnya COVID itu seperti ini, lendir luar biasa, dan dia sangat kental. Ini kita lihat sangat kental, yang menyebabkan gagal napas, bukan gagal napas oksigenasi saja, ya diambil. Kita lihat masih ya, terlihat. Jadi kita bisa lihat bahwa saking lengketnya, jadi gagal napasnya karena ketidakmampuan batuk dan menelan. Tapi kalau seperti ini, untuk orang-orang yang batuknya jelek, itu akan gagal nafas seperti itu. Ya, masih belum habis juga. Minta tisu ya, untuk naruh ini dulu. Oke. Jadi sangat ini, jadi kita perlu kasih makanan, minuman yang hangat, atau ini bisa mengecerkan darah.
Hola hermano, buen día, espero que estén todos bien. Quiero mandarles este audio para que tomen conciencia de la realidad de las cosas. Sé que se han hecho muchos memes, muchos chistes sobre el coronavirus, pero solo las personas que estamos con el virus sabemos qué es lo que realmente se siente y cómo es la gravedad del asunto. Llevo 17 días encerrada, sin contar los que estuve en el hospital. Y la verdad que esta enfermedad es horrible. Te duele el cuerpo, te duelen los pulmones, te aprieta el pecho, no puedes respirar. El dolor de la cara es horrible, del hueso, de la cabeza, la falta de respiración, la tos horrible, esa que no te deja dormir. La falta de aire, o sea, no.
One single American can save the world. However, in reality, when the mankind facing a big crisis, it is China who stands out and save the world. Up to now, we have helped 82 countries and organizations worldwide. Among them, some are our old friends, but some are not so friendly to us before. But still, we decided to stretch out our helping hands to all of them, despite the fact that we are recovering from the epidemic ourselves. Because for many of these countries, China is their last and only hope. Without the help from China, they probably will never be able to survive this pandemic. So that's why we say, today's China is more than the country itself. It is very much part of Asia.
Meanwhile, China's legal troubles are mounting. It's a question that we've been raising for more than a month now. How can the world make China pay for the made in China coronavirus? How can China be held accountable for this pandemic? And now we are happy to tell you that the efforts have begun. On Monday, we had reported on a lawsuit in Florida, the first legal challenge that directly blames China for the outbreak. Now a second lawsuit has been filed, and this one is in Texas, again in the US, and it's worse. China has been sued for $20 trillion worth of damages. 20 trillion. The case has been filed by Larry Klayman, an American lawyer and right-wing activist. The lawsuit has been filed through two of his organizations. One is called Buzz Photos, the other is Freedom Watch. It says that the Wuhan coronavirus is a biological weapon of war. It claims that the virus was made in China, inside the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It accuses Beijing of creating the coronavirus and calls the disease an effective, I'm quoting this, an effective and catastrophic biological warfare weapon to kill mass populations. Here is what the lawsuit says, I'm quoting again. COVID-19 was designed by China to be a very effective and catastrophic biological warfare weapon to kill mass populations. The COVID-19 is a very unusual and dangerous virus, seemingly handcrafted to spread rapidly through multiple pathways. There are many indications besides the nature of the disease demonstrating that the virus was engineered in the Chinese military's laboratory or laboratories. This is what the lawsuit says. A word of caution here though. The lawsuit is based on media reports, some of them unverified. The claim that the Wuhan virus is a biological weapon is still a claim. It has not been backed by science. There is no other proof yet, but circumstances and events leading to the outbreak have led to such conclusions. What the lawsuit does is add to a growing chorus. How can China be made to pay for its criminal negligence? Are there any legal avenues to punish Beijing? On Monday, we reported on the class action lawsuit in Florida. This one calls out China for trying to cover up the pandemic. This lawsuit was filed by the Berman Law Group in Florida, and we reached out to them.
The U.S. administration has just labeled 5 Chinese media organizations foreign missions, meaning the staff members are not journalists, but foreign government functionaries subject to similar rules as foreign diplomats. The move, according to the New York Times, comes at a time when the U.S. administration has moved aggressively on multiple fronts to fight what officials describe as extensive Chinese influence and intelligence operations in the United States. Am I surprised? No. This is not the first time that we've been labeled this or that. First as foreign agents, now as foreign functionaries. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time either. But I'm outraged. I'm outraged because the work to help the US general public better understand 1/5 of the world's humanity has just taken a hit. The Chinese media are not there to take vacations. They're there to bring a different side of China to the local and international audiences. And it's no secret where these organizations come from. Just like people all know where the Voice of America, BBC, France 24, DW or TRT come from. If anyone has a problem with any particular reports, well, raise it and we can talk. but to discredit entire media organizations because of the ideology of the country they come from, is a very cheap and honestly cowardice way out. I'm outraged because the China bashing in US mainstream media is likely to go even further in pitching the American people against China. They're already being fed a daily dose of negative rhetoric about China. Take this fight against the coronavirus as an example. What we are seeing is piece after piece questioning the system, the efforts of the Chinese government. Okay, China was not quick enough to handle the situation in the beginning, but is there a perfect government? It took the US 6 months to declare a national emergency during the H1N1 pandemic in 2009. Did China journalists go out and chastise the US over that? People call for transparency. Okay, I understand that, and I think it is important too. But in the eyes of the China critics, no amount of transparency will suffice. China has made a huge effort, and things have actually improved tremendously. Over 30,000 medical staff from around the country have been brought in to Wuhan, the epicenter of the epidemic, to help. The whole country basically mobilized itself to stay at home for 2 weeks to prevent the virus from spreading among the Chinese people, not to mention the rest of the world. And hundreds of billions of dollars have been pumped into the market to help businesses survive the financial difficulties. How much credit has the US mainstream media given the Chinese government? Hardly any. Is that a fair picture? The Chinese state is not a perfect one, but it's definitely not the evil actor it's portrayed to be by many in the American media. Those who complain about China's influence on the American public opinion should be grateful that China has spent the money to bring truth about the world to the American living rooms. I'm outraged because there's a stark difference when you compare the kind of reaction towards two similar developments concerning the media. China revoked the credentials of 3 journalists from the Wall Street Journal because the paper's refusal to retract or apologize for a piece that's deeply offensive to the Chinese people. The world was aghast. Wow, China stifling freedom of expression. But when the US government completely ignores the rules of free press and labels entire media organizations foreign agents or foreign missions, there is deafening silence. By discrediting Chinese media organizations, is the US safeguarding press freedom? As long as there is a systematic attack and smear campaign against China, either as a country or as a people, my colleagues and I have a right and an obligation to speak up and push back. Here, let's not play the game of separating the Chinese government and the Chinese people. Those who attack the Chinese state are doing just the opposite of what they claim, which is to help the Chinese people. Take a look at what is being done about the virus. Without a strong country where the government and the people work as one, not only would China be at stake, but the whole world too.
सारे लोगों की लिस्ट बना के इनके सबके फ़ोन नंबर्स लेके पुलिस को दे दिए गए हैं। पुलिस की साइबर सेल इनके सबके नंबर्स की जांच करेगी और ये देखेगी कि ये लोग किस किस से मिले हैं, किस किस से मिल रहे हैं, बाकी लोग अभी कहाँ हैं।
So, why are the Chinese no good at cricket? Because they eat all the fucking bats.
was in a pool of sweat. 12 hours later, I was in the same damn place. I hadn't slept a minute. I was just soaked and scared, honest to God. Here's what I've learned. Here's the secret to kicking this virus. It's not a pill or a potion. The virus wants us to lay down. The virus wants us to take it. Other than the blessed few, the rest of us who get this are going to have an experience unlike anything else they've ever had. Days and waves, but you can't stay there. Now I am wise to the beast and its ways. It changes. The fever is just softening us up. It's making your body hurt, so you don't want to move your body because what it wants to do is get in the lungs. That's what it wants to do. I feel it constricting my chest. When I had that chest x-ray done, I saw that infiltrate right away. So this doctor calls me up, asks me about my symptoms. He's a pulmonary expert, and says, "Can you get up?" I say, "Yeah, I can get up." He says, "Do it." He says, "Can you stretch your torso?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Put your arms over your head." I go like this. I'm like, "Oh God." I said, "Yeah, no, it doesn't feel that good." He said, "Do it." He said, "Can you hold your breath for 10 seconds?" I said, "Probably not, to be honest." He said, "Do it." And then he gave me the key. He said he heard me say that I wanted to keep this out of my lungs. And he said, "I saw your x-rays. It's in your lungs. And you got the right fear and you got the wrong approach. You can't wait it out." He said, "You have to fight. You've got to do the things that will beat this virus. You've got to breathe deep when it hurts. And it hurts. I know it hurts. And I'm not trying to minimize anybody's pain. When you get a fever spike and that hurts," he said, "you can't take confidence that it's going to go down. You got to layer up. You got to drink. You got to take Tylenol. And you got to fight back. You've got to make that fever go down any way you can. The chest gets you. It makes you small. It's really what defines this COVID. And the COVID is banking on you doing nothing. Your indolence, as the doctors call it. It wants us passive, on our backs. It wants us to do nothing. The answer has to be to do everything. I lie on my side, I lie on my stomach, I'm up, I'm doing my breathing. I know I've got that stuff in my lungs. I'm not going to lose to this thing that way. No way. No way I'm going to do that to my wife and my kids and all the people who care about me. I'm not going into the hospital for something that I can avoid if I can avoid it. So that's it. All day, all night, 100%. That's why I have to keep working. First of all, because I can. And if I can, I should. And it's because it's a way for me to help. There has to be a purpose to this. I want to write this all up. I want to get it out to you guys afterwards so you have a better chance. I want you to have it easier than I did. To give you the information that helps you have a better life, especially now. We have to be desperate to beat this. That is the way we will all get better.
Just a couple of days ago, I visited the Wuhan University of Science and Technology because I was told that out of the several hundred international students there, none of them contracted COVID-19. I talked to the students, I talked to the teachers, and I had the impression that there was a collective understanding that strict quarantine was really necessary in order to protect everybody. For almost several weeks, when the situation was really bad, the students were not allowed to leave their dormitory. Of course, it was difficult, but in the end, the great majority of them understood the necessity of it. They persevered, and none of them got sick. I think that story is important to help people understand exactly why the case mortality number and the absolute death toll number in China has been so low. For 76 days, the city was under strict lockdown. Not the kind of lockdown where if you choose to stay in place, you stay in shelter, you can. If you want to go out, you could also try to do that. No. For the great majority of the lockdown, people had to stay at home. Think about what happens in the United States. Some people still have to go to work. Some people are against shelter in place. Some people wear masks, others don't. I tell you, in Wuhan, it almost becomes an instinct to wear a mask. If you go out without wearing a mask, you feel strange. It's that kind of awareness to help yourself, to help others, that really help cut the path of the contagiousness of the virus. In a matter of a week or two, over 40,000 medics came from all over China to Wuhan. Just the other day, I was visiting the doctor who sounded the alarm about COVID-19 here, the first here in Wuhan. And I visited her office. You know what struck me the most was the number of ventilators lying idle on the table. She said, well, now we don't need these anymore. But there were about 15, 17 ventilators just lying like that. But of course, in the most difficult times, they needed them very much, but not anymore. In China, we never had the discussion of herd immunity. We never had the discussion between keeping the economy going or saving lives. From the beginning, it was very clear every life mattered. In Wuhan, over 3,600 people aged over 80 survived. Among them, 7 people aged over 100 survived. I think that's probably a record for anywhere in this world. Citing an example from the doctor who reported the first cases here, she said a couple of days ago, one of her first patients came back to settle the bill. I asked her, what do you mean settling the bill? I heard it was all for free, the treatment. She said, yeah, he came to get the refund. He paid originally, but later on, after the government decided everything would be for free, he came and got his money back. And then, of course, there's the role of traditional Chinese medicine. In some of the temporary hospitals where only people with mild symptoms were being treated, they were only given traditional Chinese medicine. This is an advantage that China enjoys. My last point, I wanted to say, it's something, again, probably won't be understood so easily by people in the West or in America or in Europe, is the kind of trust between the authorities and the local residents. I talked to a couple of people randomly on the street. The word that they shared was cooperation, that they trusted in the measures that they were told to follow, and the measures worked.
Lemnya COVID itu seperti ini, lendir luar biasa dan dia sangat kental. Ini kita lihat sangat kental yang menyebabkan gagal nafas, bukan gagal nafas oksigenasi saja ya, ada. Kita lihat masih ini ya. Lihat. Jadi kita bisa lihat bahwa saking lengketnya, jadi gagal nafasnya karena ketidakmampuan batuk dan menelan. Tapi kalau seperti ini, untuk orang-orang yang batuknya jelek, itu akan gagal nafas seperti ini. Ya. Masih belum habis juga. Minta tisu yang untuk naruh ini dulu. Oke. Jadi sangat ini, jadi kita perlu makan makanan, minuman yang hangat atau bisa mengecurkan darah.